Welcome to English 3E. This is class 11, and I am Jillian Percy. Here are all the ways you can reach us. If you want to talk to me while I'm in the studio, 1-800-465-7144. If you're trying to call me when I'm not in the studio, the office here is 1-800-667-3703. Do not leave a message because I don't have access to my message box. If you want to fax your work in, 1-800-463-7852. You could also email me your work, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you wish to re-listen to a recording, you can go to YouTube, capital G, capital P, E-R-C-Y, space, capital W-A-H-S-A. Okay, so this is just kind of looking ahead to what we have this next couple of weeks. We're probably going to be kind of squashing 11 and 12 together because I want to get finished Unit 2 by the end of this week. So we'll kind of go through that today and see how it goes. We've got some things in making it work, how to write a character sketch, then actually writing the character sketch. Quick little assignment looking at classified ads, then looking at an excerpt from a longer portion called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And then a short story that kind of is based a little bit on these 7 habits. We probably won't get to the class 13 today. Okay. So as always, we're doing a little bit of grammar each day just because there's so much to go through. And I want to make sure we kind of cover everything before the end. So talking today about contractions. Last week, we were looking at how apostrophes can be used to show possession with nouns like Bob's car, Jill's house. We also can use apostrophes to show that some letters are missing when we're creating contractions. So contractions are when you push 2 words together to create 1 word. And we usually drop a sound or 2 as we do this. So for example, I have, we drop the H and the A and it becomes I've. We do this all the time in speech, and we also do this in writing. We just have to make sure we show with the apostrophe that those letters are missing. I couldn't just write I-V-E because it looks like a completely different word, okay? We use a lot of contractions in English. Here, we're going to go over some of the most common ones. Sometimes if you don't use contractions in your writing or speech, it can actually make your words sound a little bit stiff or a little bit formal. So here is to start. Sometimes we connect a pronoun with a verb. So I am becomes I'm. I will becomes I'll. He plus will become he'll. Now you can see, if I took the apostrophe out of there, it would just say the word hell instead. So that would be kind of not what I was trying to write at all. So the apostrophe really is important. You can't forget it, okay? She plus will becomes she'll. You plus will becomes you'll. We plus will. And again, this is another one where without the apostrophe, it just looks like it's the word well, but it's wheel. They plus will is they'll. It plus will, it'll. It plus is, it's. He plus is, he's. She plus is, she's. Who plus is whose. I plus have is I've. You plus have is you've. You plus are equals your. We plus are is were. Or sorry, we're. And they plus are is there. I'm going to stop and look at this particular one for a second because it is one of the ones that can be really, really confusing. I'm just trying to see if I have a little highlighter. Okay. By itself, this is were, we're, sorry, we are, we're. But if you saw that without the apostrophe, it becomes the word were, like something happened in the past. We were at the store. And if you add one more letter, all of a sudden it becomes where. So that I find is one that people get confused a lot. So be very, very careful to put the contraction there, okay? This one is interesting because what we found was they're based on 2 different words, I plus would or I plus had, but they both can get shortened to I'd. So if you're kind of pulling it back out, going from I'd, you have to kind of think about Would is talking about the future. I would go with you if I had the money. I would like to be at your birthday. I had is talking about the past, right? So if you're looking at the I'd and you're trying to figure out, well, is it I would or is it I had? Take a look at, is it talking about something that happened in the past? Or is it something that's about to happen or could happen in the future? So I plus would or I plus had becomes I'd. He plus would or he plus had becomes he'd. She plus would or she plus had becomes she'd. They plus would or they plus had becomes they'd. You plus would or you plus had becomes you'd. We plus would or we plus had become we'd. Or it plus would or it plus had can get shortened to it'd. That's our awkward one. I don't think you're going to hear it very often, but it could happen. All right. There's also some ones that we use with not. I feel like that's kind of almost where you hear them more often. And there's a few ones that I find are really confusing for some people because they kind of break the rules. So that one, do plus not becomes don't. And we say it completely different. It seems like we should be saying don't, but we don't. We say don't. The other one that's really kind of funny is will plus not becomes won't. And I don't know why we don't say wilt. I don't have any reason, but just those ones, the pronunciation changes. Can plus not equals can't. Have plus not equals haven't. Did plus not is didn't. Was plus not is wasn't. Were plus not is weren't. Had plus not is hadn't. Would plus not is wouldn't. Could plus not is couldn't. Should plus not is shouldn't. Has plus not is hasn't. Is plus not is isn't. Are plus not is aren't. I want to kind of quickly talk over about things ones. Would is talking about things like would you like to? It's a possibility. It's been going on in the future. Could is more like can you? Could you go to the store with me? Are you allowed? Do you have permission? It's kind of still a possibility. It's not happening right this second. Should has the idea of is it the right thing to do? Should you go to the store with me or shouldn't you? Right? So they look very similar and they have very similar meanings, but they all have a slightly different meaning. Contraction confusion. Sometimes we contract or shorten a word in English that we're not technically supposed to. It's non-standard English. And then when we go to write it down, we're like, well, I don't really know what that is. And it's because it's not a real official contraction. So he would have is like he would have. But we tend to say, well, it sounds like he would of. But of is a preposition. There's no preposition there. It doesn't make any sense. She could have means, oh, sorry, this should be say a C, not a W. Could have, not she could have. It should have. It should have, not it would have. Okay. The thing is, when we're saying that have, the little v, it sounds like of, but it's not. It's the short form for have. This one I found a really interesting little video, and I wanted to share it with you because this is another one where in speech we use this kind of contractions all the time. And even if you're doing like little instant messages or Facebook messages to somebody, you probably write these all the time. But in academic writing, or what we call writing for school, we wouldn't use these verbally or in written. So I wanted to kind of go over those real quick because I just thought it was a cute little kind of video here. Hang on a second.
Gonna. I'm gonna give him a call. Gotta.
Is it got the vid? It's got sound, does it? Okay, can you guys hear this? Oh, what happened there? Hang on.
Gonna. I'm gonna give him a call.
Okay. I'm not hearing the sound. I'm not sure what I did wrong there, but okay. Gonna.
Gotta.
Is
I gotta go.
going to.
Wanna.
Gotta.
I don't want to do it.
Is got to. Wanna, like I don't want to do it, is want to. Lemme, is really let me. Gimme is really give me. Outta, like I'm outta here, is really out of. Kinda is really kind of. And I'ma is like I'm going to. So we say these and sometimes we even write them, but we wouldn't do them in the kind of essays that you're handing in to me because they're not quite appropriate. So I'm hoping that my sound comes back because I will definitely need it for some of the other stuff we're about to do. Okay, so here are some contractions or some sentences that are missing some contractions. The contractions are over here. We've got don't, didn't, can't, won't, aren't, she'd, wasn't, and haven't. Okay, so mom said we something go on our own. So what would make sense there? It sounds like permission, like mom saying you don't have permission, you can't go on your own. Betty said that something go with us tonight. Well, I think it's talking about Betty. So Betty said she'd, oops, let me grab it. She'd go with us tonight. Spinach is slimy, so I blank want any for dinner. Oh, that one sounds like don't. I don't want any for dinner. I am feeling sick, so I blank be going to work. I think that's going to be won't. I won't go to work. I am trying to lose weight, so I, blank eat the cake. I'm going to say didn't eat the cake. I thought John would be there, but I can't say he aren't. I'd have to say he wasn't. I don't like that teacher, so I haven't. Oh, I'm missing one. Haven't been going to class. Oh, this worked both places. Oh no, I know where it is. Aren't you going to eat any dinner? And I think I'm going to put this one down here. Why didn't you go to the store and get milk like I was thinking? This one was the idea of shouldn't. I shouldn't. I wanted to kind of work with that. The idea that it's in the future, but it's the idea of whether it's a good idea or not, whether it's proper or not. Okay. So character sketch. Okay, we're going to work on the before you read and the classified ads first, okay? Okay, so here is a sample of the text from your work. I was going to call it a story, but it's not really a story, is it? This is from the textbook called The Road Ahead, and it's on page 87, and then there's some more on page 85. The before you read is basically just kind of talking about how to handle this, saying scan the classified ads, what elements on the page make it easy to find the information you seek, and try to think of at least 3. Okay. Elements. If you're not sure what they're talking about, think about what things are different on this page than if you were seeing like a story in a newspaper. What are some layout differences or differences in how they word things, or what else? You're just looking for 3 things. So I'm going to kind of read one. Apartments unfurnished, now renting 2 and 3 bedrooms in prime downtown building, 24-hour security, CAC, Immediate must be short for immediate. I don't know what the CAC is short for. Downtown, LRG, large 2, that one's bedroom. BSMT, basement. Reno, probably renovated. 850 plus hydro. That's your electricity, I think. 555, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I see some short forms is one thing I'm noticing right away. Okay. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is like a super, super famous book. And they've included like a tiny little 3 or 4 page article from the book. Okay. But this is a tiny part of a much larger book. It was very influential when it first came out. Like everybody was reading it, everybody was talking about it. People were trying to implement it all over the place. However, sometimes people kind of they had their own idea of what they thought it meant, especially based on the title. And so sometimes they missed the message that it was trying to send. One story I remember, I think it's probably in one of the books, was a guy who was, going to be highly effective. And so he was scheduling everything, and he scheduled like 15 minutes to break up with his girlfriend. And surprise, surprise, his girlfriend wanted a lot longer than that. It took about 3 hours. And he was very frustrated because he had just not realized that he couldn't just schedule other people to make his life work easier. He still had to kind of be aware of other people. Oh, hang on. My microphone's got caught in my hair here. Okay, it's good. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm really hoping this works because, hang on a second. I'll have a bit of a problem if it doesn't. Because this is really talking about oh, sorry, friends. Hang on a second. Sometimes it doesn't always want to do what I tell it to do. Okay, let me see if this works. I'm trying to make sure the sound works is what's happening here. Okay, this is what I wanted.
Listen, there's a good chance somebody's trying to hack your website right now. You gotta make sure you're covered.
I'm supposed to be able to hear it.
I'm talking about enterprise-grade security built into your site and fully...
What's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
The correct way.
Now, this book has touched millions of people's lives. It's one of, if not the most well-known success books out there. There are literally thousands of success books out there, so why should this one be any different? Well, Stephen researched the last 200 years of success literature and found something quite interesting. In the last 50 years, most of the books have been focused on the personality ethic. Things like public image, how you dress, how you perform in social interactions, positive mental attitude, skills and techniques to get people to behave in certain ways. These books focus on how to appear rather than how to actually be. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People takes an inside-out approach. It focuses on the character ethic rather than the personality ethic. In the words of Stephen Covey, almost all the literature in the first 150 years or so focused on what could be called the character ethic as the foundation for success. Things like integrity, humility, temperance, courage, and justice, patience, industry, simplicity, modesty, and the golden rule. The character ethic taught that there are basic principles of effective living, and that people can only experience true success and enduring happiness as they learn and integrate these principles into their basic character. You know, greatness starts from the inside out. Of course, there is a place for personality ethic, but character forms the foundation. Personality ethics need to be rooted in character. The personality ethic can be seen as fake, or as a fake it till you make it image if it's not rooted in character. Sometimes people apply these personality techniques in order to use and manipulate people to meet their own goals and agendas. In the long run, people will eventually see through this duplicity. But you can't fake character ethic. If you're still a little fuzzy on this concept, picture an iceberg, right? The personality ethic is above the water. The character ethic is below the water. It forms the foundation. It's where the greatest impact over the long term is. It's where you sow the seeds of greatness. The problem is that people don't focus on the foundation. They focus on the appearance. They're looking for shortcuts and quick fixes, but there are no shortcuts. There is no quick fix program. But if you endure and apply the following habits, you will absolutely achieve your goals, and it will help you develop better relationships. A bit of a long intro there, but necessary to understand the principles this book is based on. So let's jump into the 7 habits. Habit 1 is be proactive. Let's look at something called the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern consists of all the things that are out of your control, like the weather, politics, what people think of you, the economy, other people's mistakes, and other people's opinions. The circle of influence consists of all the things you can control, your attitude, what you read, what skills you learn, your enthusiasm, how you spend your free time and who you spend it with, your habits and hobbies, and so on.
I'm going to pause to mention this because you're not quite mentioning this. The circle of concern is like all the things that we care about, right? The circle of influence is part of that. We can't control all of these things, though. We can only control the part in blue, right? The other part might matter to us. It might influence us and it might affect us, but we don't have control over it, right? I can't control the weather, but it does matter to me, right? A storm could come and, knock down the tree in my backyard and break my house. Politics, politicians could declare a war. It would absolutely affect me, but I can't really control it. So I want to kind of point this out because he's making it sound like this is just kind of random stuff that doesn't matter to us, but that isn't the case. This stuff does matter. We just can't control it. So the big idea is that we spend our time on the things that we can control instead of trying to spend our time on the things that we really can't control.
With that said, there are two ways to live life. You can either be reactive or proactive. Reactive people complain about the things that are out of their control. Their environment and outside forces affect their performance and their mood. Additionally, they don't take action or ownership of the things that they can control. And then you have the other type of person. They are proactive. This type of person realizes that their decisions determine their life, not their conditions. Proactive people don't complain about things they can't control. Additionally, they take action to improve the things that they can control. Proactive people understand that sometimes we may not have complete control over a certain situation, but we can control how we respond to a situation. So let's look at an example of how a proactive and a reactive person responds to the same situation. Two people take a test and then they both fail. One blames the teacher and gives up. The other takes responsibility and ownership, studies harder, and tries to improve themselves. The reactive person complains about how bad the teacher is, and the proactive person asks, "What can I do?" They look at themselves first instead of blaming and complaining. Don't focus on what you can't control, focus on what you can control. Take responsibility, and keep in mind, as you become more proactive within your circle of influence, it grows bigger. You bring more power into your life. Even if you only implement one habit out of these 7 habits I'm going to go over, make it this one. This one alone can have a huge impact on your life. In life, you either act or you're acted upon. Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. All things are created twice. The first time it's created is in your mind, and the second time is in the real world. So let's look at how it's created in the mind first. To get where you want to go in life, you need to have a map. You need to determine your life goals, your destination, and you also need a plan on how to get there. Otherwise, you're just aimlessly wandering around in life. So where do you want to go in life? Have you sat down and clearly defined the type of life you want? Do you know where you want to be in 5, 10, or 15 years from now? If not, then you're wandering around aimlessly at the whims of everyone else. Let me put it another way. Picture your life like a ladder. You're climbing up the ladder of life, working hard, doing the right things, and making progress up the ladder month by month, year by year. Then as you get toward the top of the ladder, you suddenly realize your ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the whole time. A lot of people live their lives like this. They don't have a vision for their life. They don't have what Stephen calls a personal mission statement. You need to make a conscious effort of where you want to end up, or other people will control your life and where you end up going. This is why this habit is so important. You need to figure out your destination first and then work towards it. If you're not really clear on what your purpose is, then think about the end of your life. How do you want to be remembered? Why do you want to be remembered for that? Find your purpose and make sure it has a strong why behind it. Not something like having a lot of money, but something that you have a real passion for. You weren't put here to make money, buy stuff, and then die. You have something to contribute to the world. You can add value. So find out what that is. Instead of asking what life has to offer you, ask what you can offer life. So take the time to think about your purpose, think about your values, and write them down. Your personal mission statement can be as simple as Will Smith's, which is, I want the world to be better because I was here. Very simple, and what you do is you keep this mission statement at the forefront of your mind, and whenever you make a decision, you see if it's in alignment with that mission statement. This will keep you on track. Go crazy, create your ideal life and your legacy. It can be whatever you want, dream big, and don't hold yourself back. Most of the time, the thing that holds us back is ourselves, so don't let self-doubt get in the way. Realize that anything is possible, so define how you want your life to be right now. Don't let the past or anything else hold you back. You write the script to your life, no one else. You are the programmer. Alright, habit 3 is to put first things first. If habit 2 says you're the programmer, then habit 3 is write the program. This is the second creation. As you learned in habit 2, all things are created twice. First in the mind, and then in reality. Habit 3, putting first things first, is where you take the steps and actions required to make your vision a reality. This is where we begin examining our daily routines and habits. Ask yourself, what's the most important thing for you in this moment? It's probably your significant other, finishing school, improving your health, or your family, right? It's not checking Facebook or Instagram. So why do we spend so much time doing these useless things, right? We need to get into the habit of putting first things first. Taking the time to focus on what really matters and focusing our efforts on what's going to get us to where we want to be in life. Really start questioning the scripts and the habits in your life. We've all fallen into the vicious cycle of waking up late, eating poorly, leaving late for work, rushing through traffic in a state of stress, being unorganized at work and being pulled in 1,000 different directions, and then getting home, eating fast food because you're tired, and then falling asleep late because you watched some new TV show. And then you wake up late the next day to do it all over again. This is the perfect example of not putting first things first. We could all use a little help in the time management department, right? And we all have a lot to do. So how do we manage time effectively? Usually we all write things down on a giant to-do list, and we tend to go in order from top to bottom with no real priorities. This is not the way. Or you schedule things on a calendar, which is a decent practice, but with one interruption, our whole game can be thrown off. You could also try daily planning based on priorities, but again, one interruption or emergency can mess it all up. Most of us fall into this time management scheme. But there is another way. The best way is to categorize things by urgency and importance. Steven developed a cool quad chart for this, and you need to categorize items in the following. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important. This is putting out fires, emergencies, and kind of the reactive mindset. Quadrant 2 is not urgent and important. These are things like your health, exercising, spending time with your family, relationships. We need to put more focus here. These are often neglected activities, and this is where success and balance and growth are found. Quadrant 3 activities are not important and urgent. So most of us spend our time here, right? Interruptions, some meetings, some phone calls, and other people's emergencies. And then quadrant 4 are not important and not urgent. These are a waste of time, busy work, some emails, some phone calls, and so on. You remember the example above of the reactive and unorganized person. Now let's look at an example of someone who puts first things first. Joe wakes up early, exercises for 30 minutes, eats a healthy breakfast, leaves early for work, and has a nice, smooth, and joyful ride. Then Joe works on the important and not urgent things in Quad 2, and he works on emergencies if needed, and then he delegates Quadrant 3 activities and rejects Quadrant 4 tasks. Joe takes a nice relaxing lunch and thinks about the rest of his day and plans his night. At the end of the workday, he closes out tasks and plans things for the next day. He gets home and prepares a healthy meal and then maybe reads before bed. He seems to have more time to think and reflect about his life, and he makes plans on where he wants to end up and who he wants to be. Basically what we did in Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. I mean, if you look at these two different examples, it's a huge difference, right? No one on their deathbed wishes they spent more time at work or checked their Facebook more often, right? So again, focus on what's important to you and make it a priority. Commit yourself to it. Now the first 3 habits, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first, are about moving you from being dependent to being independent. They're about self-mastery. They help you become more effective as an individual by developing inner strength, character, purpose, and values. The next 3 habits, which I'll cover in the next video, move you from being independent to being interdependent. Interdependence is the highest level of what Stephen Covey calls the maturity continuum. The maturity continuum consists of 3 levels: dependence, independence, and interdependence. Dependence is like the relationship between a child and a mother, or even sometimes between a boss and an employee, if the employee lacks their own inner strength, values, and purpose. It's the attitude of you. To move from dependence to independence, you have to nail those first 3 habits. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. This is the attitude of I. Most people think independence is where it's at, right? They think this is the highest level, but in fact, interdependence is the highest level. Interdependence is where you think like a team. Think family, think marriage, right? A team mentality. We accomplish what we want together. It's the attitude of we. We can combine our talents and our abilities to make something even better. Habits 4 through 6 will help you deal with people, how to read the needs of people, how to empathize, and how to cooperate. And keep in mind, you have to move from being dependent to independent before you can truly become interdependent. So go ahead and
All right, so I'm going to pause that. We'll listen to the other part a little bit later, but I really wanted you to understand this because it's a huge part, not only of today's reading, but it's also a part of the story that we have coming up next. And it's not going to make a lot of sense if you haven't seen it. He was really trying to show people how to think differently about business. But the problem was some people they didn't quite get it, or they only read like a page or 2 on it and didn't read the whole book. And a lot of people kind of missed the point of what he was really trying to say. So as you're reading it, be careful to be aware of what he's trying to get across. So assignment number 7 was list the 7 habits of highly effective people and provide one statement or a sentence to briefly describe each one. Okay. 8, do you have any of the habits you've listed? If so, which ones do you have? And how has it or they been used? Again, at least one sentence. If you do not presently have any of the habits listed, which ones would you most likely want to have and why? At least one sentence. I'm going to point something out that I think the person who wrote this maybe missed a crucial part of it, because the whole point of those steps is that they build on each other. So if you haven't got step 1, you'd probably want to go back and start step 1. But anyways, that is the question, and you'll have to interpret it however you choose. I will mark it to my best of my abilities. The next reading assignment after you do the one about 7 habits is called Bliss at the Burger Bar, and it is on pages 65 to 72. This is a story that involves a character who has read the 7 habits of highly effective people, and she is trying with all her might to follow that, to have a successful career. The story will make much more sense if you make sure to have read that little article about 7 habits. Otherwise, she's constantly referring to it, but you've never read it, so you don't know what she's talking about. So you make sure you read the first one before you get to the second one. So these questions from the extra assignment page are connected to the story called Bliss at the Burger Bar. First is just defining the word bliss. Number 10, what is a goal and why is it useful to set goals from time to time for yourself? Name one short-term and one long-term goal that you have for self, at least 3 sentences. So that's 1 mark, and this is 4 marks. I thought maybe we should kind of take a quick look at setting goals, because I wasn't sure if people had really, seen a lot of the kind of stuff that's out there on setting goals. You can set goals for yourself in all sorts of areas of your life: health, education, family, friends, work, relationships, spirituality, household, financial. It doesn't matter. Anything is perfectly acceptable. The thing is, are your goals specific or are they vague? Sometimes we may have like a vague goal of, I need to eat healthier, but we may only have a hazy idea of what we mean by that, which makes it kind of hard to follow. Often we need to sit down and spend some time thinking about the specifics to get to a goal that will make it easier to follow. So if we're looking at the goal of eat healthier, you have to kind of think about, well, what was I thinking about when I said that? What was I meaning? Like maybe you meant I want to cut out some junk food, or maybe you meant you want to eat more fruits and vegetables, or maybe you meant that, you want to be eating 3 healthy meals a day instead of just snacking whenever. Once you think about what you're trying to get across, you can write down that specific goal rather than the vague goal, which is maybe not providing enough direction for day-to-day decision making. So the acronym they see all over the place is called the SMART acronym, and the S is specific, the M is measurable, the A is achievable, the R is relevant, and the T is time bound. And we're going to talk about all those. We just looked at specific, okay? Making your goal more specific or detailed is a crucial part of it being successful. Measurable. We can measure something in a variety of ways. For example, like how often do we do something in a day or a week? For example, I will not eat junk food for at least 6 days of the week, but you're letting yourself have like 1 day off. Or you could measure amounts, like I will eat a cup of vegetables with lunch and dinner for at least 12 out of 14 meals that week. So you're giving yourself something to measure to see whether you're meeting your goal or not, basically. Achievable. This is looking at how realistic a goal is in terms of energy, time, finances, manpower, etc. So if I currently own like a small toy store that makes about 100,000 a year, then setting a goal that I will overtake Walmart in our town this year and become the top earner, that's not really very achievable or very realistic. A more realistic goal might be to try increasing our profit by 50,000 this year. And even that might be unrealistic. I'm not a businesswoman, so I don't know. But it's not meant to be like a wild pipe dream. It's meant to be something that with hard work, you could in fact achieve, right? Relevant. Relevant is making sure that your overall goal and the suggested actions that you're planning to take to reach it match up with each other. So if my goal is to eat healthier, then writing down that I'm reducing my food budget doesn't really have anything to do with that goal. It might be a really good action to take, but it doesn't connect to my goal of eating healthier. So I need to kind of go back to the drawing board and make sure my goal matches what I'm trying to do. Time bound. In life and in business, we don't normally have open-ended goals. We usually have a time frame that we want to try to accomplish something. If it's a short-term goal, that might be a month or 4 months or possibly a year. A longer-term goal might be measured in years, like, for example, trying to save enough money to buy a house. Even like this course, well, you have to the end of the year to finish it. You don't have forever. So there is a time limit on the goal of finishing this course. Some possible short-term goals. These are very vague, and I've made them vague deliberately so that you have to think of your own. You are welcome to put anything else on here. This is just kind of trying to give you some ideas, that's all. To lose a certain amount of weight in a month, to save a certain amount of money each week, to exercise a certain number of minutes each day, to visit friends or family a certain number of times a month, to send a certain number of job applications each week, to clean house a certain number of minutes each day, to start reading a specified number of books a month, to start doing odd jobs to increase your income by a certain amount each week. And then we have longer term goals. A lot of times to achieve a longer term goal, you're going to need to set some smaller term goals to get there. And these all would need to be modified to suit you, okay? They're not specific enough to count as a SMART goal. You would have to change them a bit. To lose a certain amount of weight over a year or several years. To save a certain amount of money over the next year. To save a large sum of money to purchase a large item for your family, like a truck or a skidoo. To finish high school in the next 2 years. To finish college over the next 5 years. To try to qualify for a certain promotion in 5 years. To try to reach a certain financial level with your business in 10 years. To start exercising to enter a certain competition in 2 to 3 years. For example, my brother does half Ironman marathons and stuff. So he's, always doing training for those. Maybe you've got a race you want to run or a martial arts competition you want to enter, and you're trying to, create some workout goals. It doesn't matter. These goals don't have to be school goals. I'm just going to kind of head back to where it was. Hang on a second. You have to name one short-term goal and one long-term goal. Make sure it's at least 3 sentences. I actually think 2 sentences for the short term and 2 for the long term would make more sense. This is just trying to give you an idea of some of the goals that you might have. Okay. Did that. Hang on a second. Oh, okay. So there is the second half of the video clip. We'll see if we have time for this. I just wanted to give you some encouragement because I don't know about you guys, but I know when I'm right in the middle of something, that's when I can get more discouraged. At the beginning, you're like, your momentum is taking you. And then near the end, you can see that you're almost finished, but right in the middle is when it's hardest. So I don't want to make sure, like, don't give up. It says never give up on a dream just because of the time it takes to accomplish it. The time will pass anyways. So I know some people might be thinking, well, like in 2 years, I'm going to be 30 or I'm going to be 35 or whatever. And what's the point? Well, you know what? In 2 years, you're going to be 30 or 35 anyways. But doing the work for this course, you could easily get finished by the end of this year or even sooner if you work hard. So don't give up on yourself. Be willing to do the bit of work each day and just trust that it's a good thing, that you've chosen this goal and that you can work to meet it. And this one says, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. And that is by Kareem Siddiqui. Okay, and that's what we were talking about already, which is just that I want to encourage you to keep on going no matter what. Let me see if we have here. Yeah, I don't want to go on too far ahead because there's so much to cover each day, and I'm worried if I overwhelm you, I will be sad. All right, so I'm going to grab the rest of this video so you can hear about this. I'm also wanting you to hear this because I think this stuff is really useful, and there's a lot of people whose lives were changed when they read this book and began to think this way. And so I wanted you guys to have access to this. If you're not a huge fan of reading, you might not want to read the entire book. But if you found these videos like motivating, you might decide to read the book because it really is amazing.
What if you could
what
make a couple extra $1,000s a month using one little app on your phone? Well,
there we go.
All right, guys, welcome to part 2 of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. If you haven't watched the first video, go ahead and click on the link in the description so you can see the first 3 habits. In the first 3 habits, you move from being a dependent to an independent person.
I'm gonna kind of jump ahead here.
From being independent to being interdependent. Again, interdependence is the highest level of what Stephen Covey calls the maturity continuum. The maturity continuum consists of 3 levels: dependence, independence, and interdependence. Dependence is like the relationship between. There's 6 types of personal and business relationships. There's lose-win and win-lose, which is the typical mentality for most. In order for me to win, you have to lose. This is the mindset of someone is going to get the good end of the deal and someone is going to get screwed. This is a poor mindset to have, but people live with this outlook because most people have a scarcity mindset. They have a lack of abundance mindset. There's also the lose-lose relationship, which of course is no good for anybody. And I have a quick example for this one. I had a friend who got divorced and who was about to retire from the military. Instead of retiring and getting a pension, which half of it would go to his wife, he got out at 19 years and got no pension. In this case, they both lost out. Then you have the win, and this is not really a relationship at all. This is you just getting what you want and not providing value to anyone else, and it's pretty much just selfish. Next, there is no deal. This one's pretty much neutral. If you can't come to a deal where you both benefit, then there's no deal. And then we come to the best type of relationship, which is a win-win. We want to look for win-win relationships. We want to search for mutual benefit, and we need to have the mindset that there's plenty out there. There's abundance. We can share knowledge, we can gain, we can profit together. We don't need to crush each other out. We can work together instead. Life isn't a zero-sum game, so look at every situation with a win-win mentality. A quick example of a win-win is, hey, I buy a book for $20 and I get all this insight and knowledge, and the author also benefits by getting $20. So again, seek win-win relationships. If it's not going to be mutually beneficial, then default to no deal. Habit 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Stephen tells a great story here. Stephen and his son have a talk, and Stephen can't get through to his son about some issue they're having. He then goes to a friend for advice. He tells a friend, I just can't understand my son sometimes. He won't listen to me. The friend says, hold on a second. Let me get this straight. You can't understand your son because he won't listen to you. I thought that to understand someone, You have to listen to them. That's a great point, isn't it? For us to understand someone, we have to listen to them, not the other way around. It's common sense really, but most of the time this is how our relationships play out. We often get mad at people because they don't think the way we think. We all see the world differently. We all see the world through our own perceptions and opinions based on our own experiences. You can't understand someone unless you really listen to them. Try to understand their perspective first. Try to understand how they're feeling and why. This is called empathic listening. This is the highest level of listening, the others being ignoring, pretending to listen, selective hearing, and attentive listening. None of those are very effective, but most of us listen using one of these levels. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply before the other person even finishes. So before you judge, before you take action, before you contribute, just listen. So if your wife says, "I hate my job," instead of providing advice or repeating what she said, which is a typical response, you rephrase the content and reflect the feeling and say something like, "You're not enjoying your job and you're feeling upset about it." This gets you both on the same side of the table. You're listening with the intent to understand intellectually and emotionally, and then you can move forward to repair the situation. The time to be understood is when the conversation leads to logic and advice is requested. When you go down this path, maybe she'll eventually respond with, "Should I look for another job?" This is when you can seek to be understood. This is when you can provide your advice. But if it goes back to an emotional level, then you listen again empathetically until logic is brought back. This creates an atmosphere of caring. Habit 6 is synergy. The idea behind this is that different people bring different opinions, ideas, perspectives, and strengths to the table. Instead of simply tolerating or accepting these differences, we should celebrate them. We should value these differences. This is what any good CEO does. They get their different subject matter experts and get their input to come up with the best solution. Another way to think of synergy is when you put two pieces of wood together. One piece of wood by itself isn't that.
I'm going to pause for a second. I don't remember if I shared this story with you guys or not, because I've got more than one class, so it might have been the other class. But there was Steve Jobs, and he was joining Pixar, and Pixar was planning a new rebuilding, and they were going to separate all the different departments. So the administrators were going to be in one room and the animators were going to be in another room. And I forget what the third group was. They were going to be in a different room. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, no, absolutely not. We need everybody to be in the same building so they all talk to each other." That is 100% Jobs understanding synergy, that all those people would value, find a value in talking to other people and seeing their viewpoint. Whereas if you put all the people that are exactly the same in one building, they're not really going to see different viewpoints, and they're just going to reinforce their own opinions. They're not going to get the value of learning what different people believe.
Strong.
We won't have
but
time
when you
to
put
finish
two
all of
together,
this.
the overall strength increases by more than 2 times. With synergy, 1 plus 1 can equal 3, 10, or 100. Think of how individual units can work together to create something even bigger. Another example is the human body. There are many individual parts that are amazing in their own right, but all the parts together create something amazing. So again, habits 4 through 6 deal with relationships. These 3 habits can help you have effective and interdependent relationships with others. The last habit, habit 7, is to sharpen the saw. Let's say you see a guy cutting down a tree with a dull saw. You say, "Hey, why don't you sharpen that thing? It's going to take 6 hours at this rate." He says, "I don't have time to sharpen it. I have to cut this tree down." You explain, "If you spend 1 hour sharpening that saw, it'll only take you 3 hours to cut down the tree. You don't have time not to sharpen the saw." This example can be applied to our lives on many different planes. We are the instruments, and we have to regularly sharpen 4 areas, and these areas fall into quadrant 2 activities. Physical, find the importance of it. Again, it's not urgent, but it's important. You can either exercise and feel good now, or pay for it in 30 years when you're in a hospital with all kinds of physical ailments that you could have avoided. The next area is spiritual. Ask yourself, contemplate, who am I? Where am I going? Meditate, prayer, music, art, and so on. The next one is cognitive health. Continue to learn, to explore, to expand, educate yourself, immerse yourself in another culture, teach others. And the fourth one is social health. This is relationships, living interdependently, spending time with family and friends. With all four of these areas,
I'm going to pause right here because I know we're going to run out of time soon. This is where he was really revolutionary, because a lot of times with businesses, they focus so heavily on the business, they neglect the person themselves and that person's life, basically. And a lot of people who follow these steps never pay attention to this step 7 or habit 7, which is basically taking care of yourself by taking care of your body, by taking care of your mind, by taking care of your spirituality or your ethics and your family. These ones are part of what keep you going to be able to practice the other habits in your business or in your life. So this is the part that was really kind of revolutionary. And I wanted to point out that if you are taking this course right now, then you are already working on habit number 7, because you are sharpening the saw. You're taking care of your cognitive needs by learning something new. You may also be taking care of like your financial needs by getting, the last course that you need in order to have your high school degree, in order to qualify for some sort of training. So sharpen the saw is kind of the one that caps everything, but it's also the one that's underneath everything. And this is the one that is missed really routinely by people who are just kind of looking at the book, trying to get a quick fix or a quick change. This book really was not about quick change. It was about trying to change who you are from the inside out. And then as you change, it affects all your businesses in these beneficial ways. So anyways, I wanted to talk about that because I just think it really relates to both the readings and the exercises that we have to do. And if you don't really understand that, it'd be really hard to understand both those stories. Keep all this stuff in mind as you're reading the one about Bliss at the Burger Bar, because the main character is definitely somebody who misunderstood stuff and has a whole bunch of problems because of that misunderstanding. Thank you so much for coming today, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. And hopefully, if you have any problems, give me a phone call and we can work through the assignments, okay?